Yeah, really no update. We've been busy here in June. June's been busy in recruiting. You guys have been following that, but also with our team. But to say coming out of the spring and where we are right now, there's a lot of movement in any position wouldn't be accurate. We'll work hard and there'll be a lot of progress made with Nick in the weight room, but we won't really know much until we get to the preseason.
We'll go to the back, Jeremy.
Right, as college football becomes gross, like more increasingly gross, like how much value or how good do you guys feel when like a real story happens in the group? Where there's local kids who work for years or pop up out of nowhere at a random Thursday camp. What the hell did we just see?
Yep.
How do you guys place additional value on that, knowing that in this world of NIL, of transfers, like there's a bigger story there? Does it still matter?
I think it does, yeah. I mean, I think, I think so many people do such a great job here that you probably should shut that door just because it's probably going off. Yeah, I just want to started this before the fire alarm went off. That's why I want to start a little early.
All the trouble.
All right. Let's just get it in before. Yeah. Started later would be here all day. I just think everybody does such a great job of covering, the guys that are going on and getting offers that, there's less opportunities at times to find that, like diamond in the rough. Again, just because of the great coverage that so many folks, do a great job of. But that doesn't mean that just because they're not getting any recognition on social media outlets or anything like that doesn't mean they're not good players. And we found some guys here in camp that we've been really impressed with, and it's been great to watch them. And hopefully we can get them on our team. But I think that's still the part of this thing that's very, very important is the evaluations have got to be on point because now more than ever with everything that's tied into guys coming here, we got to do a great job evaluating these guys. But I do think there's still a place for the guy who maybe isn't highly recruited in his freshman, sophomore, junior year, but then pops up and can earn a scholarship.
Front row, Joey.
Ryan, the NCAA could pass something next week which would allow you guys to have a limited number of coaches working on the field. Have you thought about what effect that might have, or do you like that proposal? Just want to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, we've thought about it. We've had conversations about it. I think that, one of the things that you have to consider is, all the guys who, want to come up in this profession and the opportunity that they can have in this profession. We want to make sure that we're not limiting those folks. But at the same time, we're in the process of recruiting, people to our team as opposed to drafting. So it is different than the NFL, and there's a lot of things to consider, especially with some of the IAWP rules that come with recruiting a prospect.
Back left, Whitney.
Ryan, you've talked a lot about evaluating players, with considering the transfer portal and trying to keep guys and all that. Is it more so like just trying to get as many of the best players as we can now, or is it still very position focused and filling gaps? Has that changed at all?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to bring in the people that fit Ohio State. That's the thing, and now more than ever. I mean, Woody Hayes said it a long time ago. You win with people. Like that's more prevalent now, maybe even than back then. And I say that because there's so much that goes with today's day and age. There's the portal, like you're saying. There's NIL. There's a lot. And so you want to have great people in your program, great coaches, great staff members, great supporting, people around the program supporting the people, but also, the players, the family members. It's all got to fit. And I think it's important that we make sure we're doing that at a high level. And, just say, well, let's go bring in the best players in the country. Like, it doesn't work that way. You have to build a culture and a winning culture. And that's what we're focused on now.
Front row, Austin.
Ryan, I know things can certainly change again in August, but when you guys wrapped up camp, where did you guys land on Josh Fryer, right tackle, maybe the right side of the line, what you guys saw in March and April?
Yeah, we see Josh making a lot of progress. He's had a really good June, another good offseason, and we felt like the spring he did a nice job there. So we feel like there's just been a lot of progress made. I think coming off of last year, he built some confidence, and then he knows he can do it. He knows the areas he's got to improve in order for him to help us win the games we need to win. So we feel confident with him playing guard and tackle. We got to figure out what that right side looks like. I would say we're probably leaning towards, playing him at tackle and trying to figure out who that right guard is at this time. But we do have some flexibility there. And, he's been a leader for us. He's on the leadership committee. And just looking at, his numbers and how he's changed his body, we're expecting a big fall from him.
Adam?
Coach, when you look at all the stuff that's changed since you took over as college football, how do you constantly continue to adjust? I mean, at this point, it's every single day. How do you allow yourself to kind of change with the changes of the landscape?
Well, it even started, I feel like in 19, that was like the first year we were making a transition, and then, COVID hit, and then, every year it just seems like there's something else. And I've just come to the conclusion that every year it's going to be different, and we have to adapt. But there's certain things that we're not going to change. There's certain values we're not going to change. It's just, principles that have, stood the test of time. And I shared this with a group before when I started doing some research as we were doing some of our recruiting, introductions and some of our, talks about, the traditions of Ohio State. We talked about how Ohio Stadium was built, and when you do your research on that 100 years ago, folks had the idea of building a stadium over 60,000 people, and that's because of what Chick Harley was doing. And they had wooden bleachers over here, and all these people started coming in, and the idea of bringing in a stadium that had over 60,000 people at the time was like, this is crazy. What is college football turning into? And they instead of going to the state or going to the school, they went to the community to raise the money. They raised at the time over $1 million. Well, now you fast forward 100 years, and the conversation still might be like, what is college football doing, right? And in this situation with NIL, we had to turn to the community for help, and Buckeye Nation showed up again in a big way. So although the landscape is changing, I don't know if, 100 years later, if it's that much different. It's just in a different time, in a different, set of issues that we're working through. But I think it's exciting. I think there's a lot of positives to it. I do. I think that we're taking the next step with the revenue sharing to try to institutionalize some of it, which would be big for us.
Front row, Bill Rabinowitz?
Yeah, every year's got questions, but it seems like this year's team has probably fewer questions in terms of position depth. Obviously, the offensive line, the right guard, you could address that specifically. But as you look ahead to really training camp starts in a little more than a month, what are the real questions that you have in your mind about position battles and who's going to fit here or there?
I would say on offense, we got to square away the quarterback, as you know. I feel like, the offensive line on the right side, we got to solidify that. I feel like we got to build, enough depth at receiver that we feel like we can put in 5 or 6 in the game and feel good about it. On defense, I think we're still looking to figure out, who are going to be the guys inside, the third, the fourth, the fifth defensive interior lineman that we're going to put in the game. And then same thing, just I would say depth a little bit at safety, just to kind of see who those next guys are that are going to step up. And so we know it's going to be a long year. We're going to need everybody. And so in a lot of those areas, it's depth. Special teams wise, punter is going to be, that is significant. We just brought in Nick and so there'll be a battle there. So I'd say those are probably the areas we're focused on the most.
Front row, Dan?
Ryan, just to follow up on the offensive line, there was, I think, a school of thought you guys might look for a transfer in that post-spring window. Did you guys do that? Did you guys not find the guy, or were you just confident in the guys you had?
Just like, in January, if we're going to bring somebody in, it's to fill a hole. We're not just going to bring somebody in to bring somebody in. Like at all positions, we'll always look to see what's out there. We did evaluate some of the guys that were out there, and we felt like coming out of it as we evaluated it. There was a couple guys that we checked on, but ultimately, like based on where we were and some of the young guys that are coming up, we felt like we saw some progress in the offensive line this spring. So there wasn't as many folks in the portal, in after the spring. So we looked at it, we identified it, we did our due diligence, but we're going to go with what we have now.
Second row, Bill Landis?
Right, your linebacker was interesting that you have 2 of maybe the top 5 or so guys in the sport, and then a bunch of guys who haven't played. That may be similar to that O-line question, but did you consider trying to add there, understanding that probably a difficult sell when you have such talent at the top to bring somebody in who's experienced. Just like, what were those conversations like, and how did you settle on being comfortable with, Trey and Quinshon and the young guys?
Well, like you said, I think we got some experience there with those two guys, and then, we felt like coming out of the spring that James and Sam both did a nice job, and we're gonna have to play them, and they're gonna have to take on a little bit of that. We have started having conversations with Caleb Downs. That was part of the recruiting process of possibly doing a little bit of running back as well. It's something that he wanted to do, so. We've been having him in some of the meetings and some of the individual drills as a possibility there if, needed so down the road to continue to build depth at that position. But, I think, we feel like, if you have, 4 strong running backs going, then, that's going to be enough to carry the season. I do think that take some carries away from them. But to your point, James and Sam are going to have to step up to be guys that we count on.
I have 13 more questions about Caleb.
Save that for another day.
Tim May, go for it.
Yeah, just follow up on that. Is he capable of stepping in and being a running back at this level? I mean, obviously,
Yeah, well,
the video says a lot.
We'll see. We talked about it in the recruiting process, the first time around, and more specifically the second time around. And so he's been around a little bit just to get a feel for it. We did very little in the spring. We did, I think we pitched him an option or something like that in the spring just to kind of get him going. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. We don't have a specific plan right now, but we do want to introduce him to that. Just the same thing like Lorenzo Stiles has played receiver. He did that at Notre Dame. He's out there a little bit just kind of learning. It's healthy. You're seeing it from the other side of the ball. This time of year, you can get away with that a little bit in the preseason. Where it goes, we'll see. But you just never know, and we're trying to put some contingency plans in place because it could be a long season.
Yeah, this is my 41st year covering Ohio State. I don't remember ever expectations like this in the summer. There were some that were almost this big.
Sure.
Do you sense that too? And what is that pressure like as you're working through a summer?
Yeah, and people have asked me that. I go back to the expectations every year are the same. I mean, it's just the truth. When opening press conference, I said you got to beat the team up north and win every game after that. That's just the expectations. And when you come up short, you got to figure out a way to get those things fixed. I think we have done that. But the expectations are the same every year. The pressure's the same every year. I just like the pressure when you got a really good team behind you. So that's what we got right now. And we know it's going to be a long season. We know what we're working towards. But I will say this about this team. Well, we've been talented. There's been times in the past we've been talented. I don't know since I've been here if we've been this talented and this experienced together with guys that have played a lot of football, 4th and 5th year guys. That does matter.
We'll go next door, Stephen. Go ahead.
Since you brought it up, maybe this is just talks because it's summertime, so you can have these type of conversations. Maybe we're making a big deal out of nothing long-term situation, but we've seen it around college football lately. Guys playing both sides of the ball and doing quite well. Or Travis Hunter's doing it out in Colorado, and Caleb Downs has been a punt returner, so we see what he can do with the ball, but there's also the stamina aspect of that, and getting to a 16-game season. So I'm not saying it's going to be 40 snaps or something like that, but what about his athleticism and what he brings to the table that lets you know that if you wanted to explore it in a real game, he could last and still be an effective safety?
Yeah, we'd have to see all that. He did it in high school, but we got some really good running backs in the room, so it's not something that we're planning on doing. But we are going to work on it a little bit. Caleb enjoys that part of it. We did agree that was something that we were going to look into. Where it goes, I don't really know right now, but I know that he has the capability to do it. He has the athleticism to do it, and we'll kind of see where it goes, see how he does, and maybe hand the ball to him a little bit in the preseason. Because again, it's going to be a long season. We have to make sure we have contingency plans in place. But I know it's something that he enjoys, having the ball in his hand. So even during their first time around the recruiting process, we even talked about him coming in as an offensive player. Ultimately, we think his ceiling is highest on defense. But I also agree. I think that having guys go on the other side of the ball and just see it, listen to meetings, is really healthy for their development. We're going to do that regardless.
And I can see this really quickly. Your defensive recruiting right now is maybe further along than it's been in years past. And I think we've asked numerous questions about it in the past, but is this a product of seeing it over the last couple of years and now it's just telling guys, hey, this is what it might look like. They're seeing it in real time what it's going to look like.
Yeah, we talked about it when Jim first came in, and I think Tim Walton's doing an unbelievable job as well on the back end. And Matt stepped right in, and James and Larry. I think they're all doing a great job. But like you said, it's one thing to talk about it. That's theory. Testimony is, let's look at this is what we're doing. And then I think you're seeing a lot of guys just excited about playing in this defense. And they see the capabilities and the flexibility too. Right now, the way we play right now is based on, we have 4 really talented defensive linemen that are really good and we got a lot of depth at those positions. But there's also flexibility with some of the things Jim's done in the past that we're definitely looking at. And some of the recruits that we're looking at who bring some versatility, pass rusher, we have the jack position and those type of things. So that's exciting as well. And I think you're seeing a lot of the recruits, really get fired when they get here.
Deep left field, Dave Holmes.
Yeah. Coach, I think your first couple of years here, the identity was very clear from an offensive standpoint, an air-it-out type team. When I look at the defensive talent and the playmakers you have there, has your identity changed? I guess, what do you think the identity is of this 2024 team?
Well, we'll see as we go, but we know what we need to do to play in the big games. That's never changed. We have to be able to stop the run the football, take care of the ball, and there'll be opportunities to throw the ball. That'll happen, but we're going to have to do those things to win close games and play situational football. But I think you won't really get a feel for what the identity of the team is until we get into probably the beginning of October. And I think we all have ideas of what it could go, but now that we're playing in a playoff format, just like a lot of those NFL teams, sometimes they don't really quite understand their identity until they get about halfway through the season. I don't think it'll take that long, but we're able to play some games and kind of work through some things. And I don't think our defense is going to change much in terms of what we did last year. I mean, it's a lot of the same guys back. Could look a little different on offense.
All right, we got time for 2 more. We'll go to Doug Limmeries.
Hey Ryan, you lose an important recruiting staffer to promotion in Michigan. It's the second time someone's gone to Michigan this offseason. How do you react to something like that? Is it something that could someone like that take information that was learned here that could help Michigan or hurt Ohio State? What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, all good questions, and I want to talk about the guys that are here. The staff members that are here, the coaches that are here, the players that are here, the ones that are Buckeyes.
Joe Nugent.
With the scheduling change that was announced yesterday, how and why did that come together? Did it have anything to do with the expanded playoff? Maybe, making the beginning of the season a little different?
Yeah, I don't know all that came with it. I know it got presented to me a while back, and I was on board with it. So, yeah, I think we do have to look a little bit different at our scheduling as we move forward based on the way the format is at the end of the season.
Can I ask quickly about the linebackers? Got in here a little bit late. How do you feel about your linebackers? Cody seems like obviously he's the veteran in the room. Seems like he's locked in as a starter. CJ, what do you see his role being? Sonny, what do you see his role being? Gabe, all those guys.
Yeah, good versatility. All those guys. Arvell Reese, like you said, CJ, Gabe, Sonny, Cody. I'm missing a couple, I'm sure, but was that? Yeah, Arvell. Yeah, these guys are very versatile guys. You can see the length on them, and they do a good job in terms of fitting the runs. They have enough length to cover in zone, but they'll also blitz, and that's something that we wanted to really work on this offseason is getting better at blitzing. And hopefully we can even take the next step in the preseason. But all playmakers. I think when you see us, in the length that we have there, we look a little bit different than in the past, and that's exciting. When you tie that in with our front 4 and the back end, it's important to make sure that the linebackers are they're the glue. Cody's had an unbelievable offseason. He leads the pack with that group, but you're seeing a lot of those guys come on.
Last one, Tony Gerber.
Ryan, you talked about this defense being similar to last year. You could be very good as a base. You can be more aggressive. How do you envision the aggression compared to Jim Roll's first year and last year being?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the balance that we're trying to figure out as we continue to work into the season of what are those things that we need to enhance, and then what are the things that we need to have for curveballs and mix-ups. I think that's the art of it, and that's all the stuff that we're working through now. But to your point, you've seen us do both. And so what is that right mixture? And then putting the guys in the right position to do their job. I think that's, you can just drop a blitz, but, is that guy a really good blitzer? And then what stress are you putting on the back end? All those things come into play. So there's a lot of blitzes out there, but what are going to be the right ones for us at the right time? And then how much we do it is going to be based on the opponent, but also the success that it's having throughout the year.
Do you have any injury updates, Lathan, any of those guys?
Right now, I don't, other than the fact that the guys who, were going through the spring who didn't participate are having full summers and plan to have full preseasons.